Our next speaker today is Nancy LieWinters. She's originally from Bayonne, New Jersey. She's lived in Miami, Florida for a while, and she's been in Carrollton, Texas for the last 22 years. She moved to Dallas 40 years ago, more or less.
Well, I've been here 40 years. I've only lived in my house for 22 years.
Okay. Nancy is divorced. She has two children that are in their late 50s. She loves to write and she loves to sing karaoke. So help me welcome Nancy LieWinters.
Thank you. Well, I've struggled for days to share a story about my relationships so I could understand my own feelings of pain and abandonment. I have many great memories of my father, my mother, my aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends that I had during my childhood. But the stability and the sense of belonging with any of them is missing. I didn't intend to tell the story of my life, but I recognize my entire life has been at a high speed and what I've come to recognize as hyper mode in my life. I needed a path, I needed a plan. I had to keep moving to grow up independent and self-sufficient. While writing about some of my early events in my life, I wanted to express my feelings about my most profound and fondest memories of any of my family members. Still, I am surprised that I don't have any that are related to that warm, cushy kind of love, a sense of belonging. Ironically, that's the basis for my feelings of abandonment, loneliness, and fear. The irony of that statement is that it's an awakening for me. That sudden awareness allows me to continue with a message to everyone struggling with similar blocks to happiness and peace of mind. I am suffering from years of abandonment issues and pain, recently renewed when a person I believed was a soulmate abandoned me at a stage of life at 80 years of age. After a 10-year relationship in which I cautiously and carefully gave him love and care, and a horrific accident where he died twice and was resuscitated, he left me in the cold. I can't say that I didn't understand because he was broken, and his entire body, mind, spirit. And finally, after more than a year, he worked hard to return to his work. As a man in cybersecurity who worked for a degree in cybersecurity and criminal justice, he fought to regain his strength, his faculties to return to his profession as an applied mathematician and cybersecurity programmer. However, I didn't expect him to call and say to me, "I must do this." Before he disappeared, he told me. He said, "I made a formal agreement with family members to secure my money." And then I heard nothing more. He just told me he couldn't see me for a while. However, no details, and he still bought me 2 refurbished computers, but appeared to be hiding. Never came back to my house again. I expected something to happen because this man I loved was broken into a million pieces and was going into survival mode. After a few months, he said he had a contract, he would be gone out of state, and didn't know how long it would take. Then all communications were shut down. I contacted him through another phone number, and our conversations were brief and maybe 3 words. "How are you? Do you think about me? Do you love me?" And those were my few words. And his answers, "I think about you daily, I'm fine, I love you like a friend." When he said like a friend, I broke down. Of course, I don't know anyone's age in this group, but I will say, until you're in a relationship for almost 11 years, you're left behind again at 80 years of age and going through surgeries, financial stress, and loneliness, and you've heard, "I love you like a friend." This friend doesn't contact you when you're in a skilled nursing facility for a month and you can't understand that devastation and that pain it causes. We've all had severe pain. And when we had loved ones die, most of my family is deceased, and I miss every one of them. I especially miss my mother, who died in 2010. I quit my marketing job and drove to Florida to be with her for 4 months until she died. I transported her back to her church in Miami from Inverness. The big difference between losing a loved one through death and a loved one through abandonment is inexplainable. My mother didn't decide to leave me. The person I thought of as my soulmate after so many years of my life decided to leave me alone and in that excruciating pain again of abandonment. I thought about telling my story of my childhood to impart my feelings of emptiness, my fear of abandonment, and lacking the one thing I've searched for all my life, love. However, that story would contain moving from one place to another, living with my mom for about 2 years of my life, and moving with my aunt and uncle. When I made a phone call to one of my cousins, one Friday evening from a neighbor's phone in the apartment complex my mom and I lived in, a studio apartment, and we did not have a phone. A friend lived next door in a larger apartment with her mom, brother, and sister. When my mother didn't come home from work on Friday, I didn't know if she knew that my father was working and not picking me up that weekend. At that time, not everybody had a phone and didn't have cell phones, so communication was limited. I should add that this was not the Friday night. I stayed alone that night, and I was afraid, so by morning, I went next door to my neighbor's apartment to use the phone. I called my cousin from the neighbor's apartment, and my cousin, who was 4 years older than me, told me, pack up some things, and she would come to me on a bus and take me back home with her to my aunt and uncle. To make the long story shorter, when my uncle and my aunt came home, my cousin already had my things in her bedroom and told me to go into the bathroom and lock the door and not come out until she talked. And they called my father, whom I believe was not working that Saturday. I heard the talking and discussions, and after a long while, my cousin told me to unlock the bathroom door and come out. I did that, and I admit I was frightened. I loved my mother and father, but if I thought about it, they were intelligent, hardworking, good people, but lousy parents. I was just their child, but I did not seem to belong anywhere. After the discussions were finished, I stood in the kitchen. My cousin stood next to me and said, "You're living here, and we will share my bedroom." End of story. That was the only move I made while with my mother, or through the years of weekends with my father and my other aunts and uncles and cousins, and I would be able to write about their moves, the moves I made from infancy up until the house I live in now and reside in for the past 22 years of my life. However, my total abandonment issues come from 3 different marriages and divorces, and I believe this last 11-year relationship I had, who I thought was a person God himself picked out for me. The strange part of my story regarding relationships is that I never had real love or sense of security. And no matter what happened, I would have a place where I belong and someone who loved and protected me. I'm reflecting on this one incident in my lifetime because exposing my oh so complicated and ever-changing unexpected moves and my education in like 3 grammar schools, Catholic grammar schools, Bayonne High School, an advanced education and licenses I secured from everything from Dade County Community College in Florida, Dallas County Community College, the RN program, the UTD and General Studies program, Richland College, retaining a 23-year realtor's license in Dallas, 2 cosmetology licenses both in Florida and Texas, starting 3 home-based businesses, forming a unique, in other words, I even bought a $3,000 prototype machine for facial toning, operated in a friend's nail salon, and so many more things to keep moving. And it was all to prove that I had worth and I could support myself, regardless of being alone and feeling I was not worthy of love. There's no way I could write about all the jobs I worked and ventures I understood whenever I was fundamentally abandoned and trying to figure out how I survived this time. I would bore you with 100 pages about myself, defeating the story's purpose. The purpose of this talk is to relate my feelings, insecurities, regrets, and guilt I believe are justified, because one of the things I did in life was I divorced my first husband because I could say I loved him, but I never felt love in me. I was empty, and my actions, chores, and caring for my 2 premature babies were wood, hay, and stubble. I made a mistake, and I was ultimately responsible for that divorce. Today, right now, I confess that my guilt and regret, my rationale for the abandonment I've experienced, is related to the knowledge that my first marriage was the only marriage performed in a Catholic church. I broke my vow to my first husband and to God. I walked with the guilt of abandoning my husband and ultimately taking his children from him. I consider this my biggest sin. And why do I stand before you and ask you, where does your pain come from? Where are your insecurities? Where are your abandonment issues, doubts, and fears? Where do they stem from? I'm confessing my inner self here now, because I finally crumbled under the guilt, pain, remorse, and despair to the floor in my bedroom. As a Christian who learned and absorbed the catechism lessons taught to me in a Catholic school I attended, it came to me that I learned the dogma. Still, I had not used the doctrinal principles of the dogma. But the answers were in the movies I watched in the auditorium as a child about the life and death of Christ. The answers I needed and searched for were not in my relationships. Neither were they the cause of my pain at this moment. My answers were in the doctrinal principles I learned in Catholic grammar school. This is not all about religion. It was about my faith in a power that could help me through all my pain. My pain was from abandonment because no one person could fix or fill the void I felt from being unloved. No person had the answer for me about why I was always left behind. No person could help me gather the strength to accept my situation without holding on to my guilt, remorse, and blame for everything I ever did or didn't do. So what changed me into a completely different person who is standing here telling you a saga of the basis for my pain, while saying that while I am still in pain, I am at peace. While in that heap on my bedroom floor, I saw my mother's old blue glass rosary beads hanging on the lamp where my friend put them when she found them while I was in the hospital. I reached for the rosary beads, but while holding them, I prayed directly to God to help me. I said, "Oh Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof. Speak but the words, and my soul shall be healed." In closing that dissertation to you, I don't profess to be someone special. Still, my prayer was so deep and heartfelt that I sobbed and begged for relief and for him to fill me with his Holy Spirit so I could be strong and with his help be healed from my physical, emotional, and spiritual pain. My prayers were answered. God sort of appeared to me, but not in some science fiction movie way. He was not a ghost, but a vision in my head, like I was looking at a bright block of ice waiting to be carved. And then I heard his message to me. I tried to tell you the exact words or the story about his coming into my mind, body, and soul, but I wouldn't be able to do that sufficiently enough to make you believe me. However, I have little miracles that happened to me in my time of need. Some are tangible and unbelievable even to me when they happen. Although I just said that I had little miracles happening to me and they might sound unbelievable, I will reverse that thought because this is real and provable. I have witnesses who were there at this place, and although they were strangers, they worked in a store where this one miracle took place. And while it was a miracle, it is not too spooky to believe, so here it goes. After my final breakdown and visit by God in my bedroom, in the story I just told, I was working on my computer on a book I was trying to write, which again was a message from God. But I digress. Another obstacle to my completion of that book occurred. I have a large monitor screen attached to my laptop, slightly impaired vision, which is vastly improved on that large screen, But while typing away, my keyboard, which is old but very expensive, started acting up. One key was not printing, and while slightly lifted, it would start to work again. But on Sunday, January 1st of 2023, New Year's Day, at 4:15, the keyboard acted up. Now the not printing key started printing lines of one letter and couldn't stop it while in the middle of an essential chapter I was writing. So since this very expensive keyboard had an exact touch that I needed for my severe bilateral carpal tunnel syndrome and osteoarthritis, the other flat, cheaper keyboards, they wouldn't connect to my keyboard, to my computer, and they didn't work. I couldn't use them. So I put it in a plastic bag, my keyboard. I threw on a sweater and jeans and headed down Central Expressway to Micro Center. By this time, and with another block to my proceeding to work on what I was God-given to do, or the God-given thing that I thought it was a gift to me for a supplemental income and some other potential perks that God messaged me, I first questioned if it was him or Satan. I asked questions of God because I couldn't understand why I would receive any fame or fortune for writing a book. However, strange as it may sound, he let me know that I was writing and praising him, not myself. And the gift was something I could do to earn fame and a little bit of income. Now on January 1st, after about 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, it was raining. The store would close at 6 on New Year's Day. I was driving my 20-year-old car in the rain down Central Expressway, crying and praying, and asking myself if I had enough credit on my credit card to buy a new keyboard. That's the state of mind I was in. But the whole time I was compelled to follow my instincts because I knew my mission was from God and would have an answer to my problem. I got to the store a few minutes before 5, looked for a technician, but no techs were available on Sunday afternoon, so I went down the aisle of keyboards where they were lined up. The salesman came up and asked me if he could help. I told him I needed a new keyboard because I was working, blah, 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 on a very significant project for me, and I could only use this keyboard like the one I had because the touch and the spring for my fingers. And I couldn't type on a cheaper flat keyboard because I had one, didn't work. He knew nothing about keyboards, but said I was in the right place. So I found my keyboard on there, but it was the long one with the added addition keyboard on it. And that's not the one I wanted. He called the manager, and the manager went and looked up my same keyboard. He told me it was in the Mac section, in the Mac keyboard, as a Mac keyboard. So I told him it was perfect. And I know it was expensive, but I've used it successfully on my Dell laptop for 7 years now. He told me he had it, but the price was still $129.95. I told him I needed something comparable for my hand issues. And now a little miracle, I declare to be the truth. A young man approached from across aisle to the one where the manager and the salesperson were surrounding me or standing next to me. And he came face to face with me and politely said, "I apologize for eavesdropping, but I hear this is important to you. And you only have about another hour to find a keyboard. So I wanted you to know, I think you should get the keyboard you need." I told him I would love that. And if he could help me, if he knows anything about these keyboards, dozens of keyboards, if he could help me find the one to duplicate these keys, I could use his help, because the cost was just too much for me to charge on my card right now. He said, "I don't think you understand. I want to buy it for you." Again, the tears flowed down my cheeks, and I told him I couldn't let him do that, but I appreciated his offer. Then he said, "I'm not married, I have no children, and I could do this for you." Then, with those tears still flowing down my cheeks, I said, with this offer, I would accept it if he understood that I prayed for help, and he is a gift from God. He just arched his eyebrows and said a little bit like, "Okay, that's fine." And I thought, not only did I get to the register for the purchase, and I offered him to use part of my credit card for the cost, but he just gave his debit card to the cashier And with the tax and a 3-year replacement and service contract he added, the total price came out to $184. I asked him his name and he told me, Nathan. But he wouldn't give me his last name. And I said, Nancy. So we both have names that end with N. It was something strange and I felt it was meant to be. I told him I believed in at least a touch to hug him if he felt okay with that. I thought it was meant to be. I told him I believed at least in that touch, so I asked him, would he mind? He said, okay. He gave me that gentle touch and went on his way. I went home with a $184 gift from God. So why did I tell you one of my stories about my entire life and searching for just one thing, proving that I could find the answers in my mind? The power of positive thinking is only as good as the source of the messages. When I finally broke into a million pieces of mind, body, and spirit, none of my dear friends could help me. Nothing happened to ease my pain of abandonment and loneliness and fear. However, the first time I received God's words, His promises, and my feeling of peace and hope was the start of my knowledge and my relationship with Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, and the sacrificial Lamb of God who took away my sins, remorse, fear, and hopelessness, and replaced it with hope and the kind of love I wanted and needed my entire life. The message I'm trying to impart to you is this. It is so easy to get relief. And the relief you need from whatever source your pain comes from. All you have to do is accept and believe in Him. Open your heart and receive Him. I promise you, this is not just a story. It is my testimony about how I feel right this minute by giving you my exact accounting of what happened to me and for me since I finally received a personal relationship with Jesus. He's our miracle worker. He gives us the power and strength, not from us, but in His name, where we get our power to heal ourselves and others. I would be grateful if you wanted to contact me, to meet me, to tell me your story while I share mine. This entire little speech is about the most critical context of the story. I learned about Jesus, I knew about Jesus, and now I have a personal relationship with Him, and He provides me with the answers I need to fulfill my destiny designed for me by God.